We didn't invent the term white. We did like CRT
Oh
didn't
my
invent
God.
the term white.
Okay,
CRT didn't
But
invent
it
the term
that's the
doesn't
white.
dodge.
matter.
No, wait, that's
Wait,
the dodge. That's the
let me
dodge right
finish.
there. We
It's
didn't invent
totally
the
the
term white.
dodge.
What we're
Listen,
talking about,
none
what
of
the white is.
none of us
Let him
invented the racist black stereotypes either. None of us were born. But if we came in here and started using those negative black stereotypes, you would have every right to call us fucking racist, and you should. He is stop.
Yeah,
Just
don't cut me
I'm.
off.
You're gonna get kicked off. I'm gonna kick you off so fucking fast if you call that. If you say nuance one more fucking time, you try me. You try me.
with the CRT stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've never intentionally taken anything out of context. I remember I always bring up that one page, and then the black nationalism, black separatism page, and you said that the rest of the page somehow contradicts what my interpretation, and I've read that page like 1,000 times, and I have no clue what you're talking about. So
Okay, so let me see if I can find that one. But the one I actually have in my mind that I can
tell me the example
is the interest convergence one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one where you claim that Derek Bell was saying that Brown v. Board was a liberal failure. It was a failure because it was a liberal answer to a question that it just, I don't know, it made things worse or something like that.
Well,
and
like with interest convergence, my understanding and what with Brown versus Board of Education, and what Derek Bell's point was that the only reason that got passed wasn't because white people or America as a whole decided it was morally right to end segregation. It was because they had to fight, communist subversion happening in our country, and America didn't want to look bad on the world stage. So we had to just do this to kind of fight the commies, and the interests converged at this moment.
And at the time, and I think two of his books, he has like a whole bunch of sightings, and there's more sightings as more like top secret stuff documents are being released, that for the federal level, that was actually true.
I've looked. I read one of his. I don't remember the whole book. I read one of his chapters on one of these books about this, and all I could find was it all literally comes from one source, and it was just someone. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It was one historian that made this claim and said that he had FBI documents that showed this, and I don't know. The whole thing seems very sketchy as fuck to me. That because it kind of goes into that conspiracy theory realm where, like, yeah, I can imagine that someone in the federal government, even the president, says, hey, now would be a good time to get rid of segregation because we could use, fighting communists as, to get people on board with it. But it's like you can't get everyone on board just because the government says so. Like, it has to have a grassroots origin.
Well, there was two truths to that. At the time, everyone wasn't on board. That's why it was a Supreme Court decision.
That's true.
But two, what he was saying was at the time, at like that period between like the early 1950s and mid 1950s, communism because how it was perceived, not the truth of it, but how it was perceived was actually doing a lot better when it came to interfering in other nations and everything, and how those nations grew, than capitalism in the very beginning. So what he was saying was, in order for the United States to expand honestly the capitalistic Americanism into the rest of the world, they had to get rid of some of the things that would have been questionable in the United States.
No, like I understand all that, and I understand his argument. I'm just saying, like, as you said, this is a Supreme Court case, okay? Like, so this would imply, like, his interest convergence is a conspiracy theory, because basically what he seems to be suggesting is that the president or somebody in power is telling the judges on the Supreme Court, hey, we need to fight I know you guys hate black people, but we need to fight the commies, so get rid of segregation. And to me, that's crazy.
I don't know if it's that. Again, when you get a chance to read his second book, the one he did with I can't remember the name now. It's so late. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
in his second book, he started releasing some of the information of like the correspondence with some of the federal judges. So it's one of those things that we won't completely know because we haven't seen every single conversation, and we probably never will see every single conversation. But he has shown enough to be, I would say, maybe move it a little bit out of the conspiracy theory, but it definitely wasn't. Brown v. Board was actually a negative to the growth and development of Black people. It definitely was not that argument.
Well, that's a different argument. But I thought his argument was that he either thought, I thought he did think that I thought he kind of bought into the conservative argument to some extent, that Black people were doing better under segregation, and therefore he's kind of making a causation correlation argument that they should not have done Brown versus Board of Education.
He's saying they shouldn't have done Brown for. I don't want to take over the whole conversation. I'm still sorry.
It's like 12 o'clock at night. It's totally fine.
I'll join in too. Don't worry. I'm just waiting.
They're not saying that. They're saying the way Brown v. Board was implemented and the timing of it created more issues, especially when you look at how there was a giant change to how federal housing programs went. There was a giant change to how the welfare policies went. There was a giant change to like how there was a major shift in how everything was done between the late 1950s and the early 1970s, that passing Brown v. Board was either ineffective or negative, because then you don't have anything that you could look at as a studyable problem, if that makes any sense, to where everything is now individualistic. And it's not saying that individualism is negative. It's saying that you really cannot find where the issue is, because a lot of the things that were already done for groups before to develop were either shifted or taken away by the time African Americans were allowed to compete. So that's that was his full argument. It wasn't that it was wrong or evil. It was just the timing of it and the effectiveness was nowhere near what it was sold to be.
Right. No, I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't remember his exact, position on this. So it's definitely possible. It's far more nuanced than whatever take I gave, and it could be far more acceptable than whatever take I gave. I think my overall point about Bell basically being horribly pessimistic and not believing that liberalism, or really anything, it seems like, could produce a racially equal society is still stands. And the fact that CRT kind of uses that as a basis, I think, is the toxic seed that it grew from. And now we're kind of dealing with the poisonous fruit that's bearing from that seed.
Well, let me ask you this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in addition to labeling what is understood now to be, should be understood to be American values as white culture.
Right.
And as a consequence, trying to claim that it's somehow bad for Black people to assimilate and integrate, because that's somehow a cultural genocide of Black culture. And that basically just framing the entire thing as if, like doing what every other immigrant has done in this country, is somehow a bad thing for Black people. And that's what puts us back in the situation when they start asking for things like, well, maybe we need to go back to segregation.
Well, are you talking about the Jamal and can't remember what his other name is, the comparisons they made of the one guy in the business suit, the one guy in the Kintic loft? Are you talking about?
Oh, you mean in the CRT book? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's definitely an example of that in the CRT literature. Yeah.
Again, though, a lot of them, now don't get me wrong, there are certain people that have used it absolutely horribly, but that argument was more an abstract type argument than a what should be argument. And what it's saying is, in the abstract of how things were working in, I think that was the early 80s when they wrote that, in the abstract of how things were going, it was more along the lines of work together within your community the same way other immigrant communities were doing before trying to individually assimilate to the rest of the country. Which, if you look at multiple immigrant groups, they actually did that. They worked within their communities and they slowly expanded as they were gaining a foothold. So that was more of the argument of what that was and how to do it, more than don't get me wrong, some people did take it way out of line, and I can't argue for them, but it was more along the lines of how will we assimilate into the rest of the world or in the rest of the United States, when for centuries there's been a movement to exclude us.
Well, I guess my question would be, go ahead, Sitch.
Well, I was just gonna say before you ask your question, I think you're far too charitable with your interpretation on these things. And I'll try to bring up the passage, because I believe the passage, and they put Derek Bell in the most extreme camp of the various positions you could take on the assimilation versus nationalism one. But what were you going to say?
I was going to ask.
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
I have a question as well.
Well, no,
okay. My question was, could you define what you believe Black culture is? The thing that they feel that they... No, I'm asking...
Dialogue always?
Yes, Sitch, tell us. Black culture, what is it?
The thing that they need to protect, like, Black people from losing, so therefore they can't become Americans. So what is that? What is the thing that they think they're protecting?
Well, that's the thing. Black culture is that conversation, because there really isn't a Black culture. It's an amalgamation of like 50 different cultures picked up over the years of whoever's interacting with at the time. That's why when you go to the inner city or Black neighborhoods, even though the Black neighborhood might be in the same type of condition, there's an incredibly different culture in each area, because they just absorb the culture surrounding you.
So then where's the cultural genocide? That would be my question. What is it they're genociding if there isn't one?
Do you even take this position at all? Or do you, I don't even know if this is your position.
The cultural genocide position?
Yeah.
No, I know what he's saying. There are certain people who are either connected or written for CRT that claims that there's a cultural genocide. But if you actually pull them aside and try to make them explain more, they become a lot more
magical.
I guess not as hyperbolic. Well, no, they're not as hyperbolic as they are in their writings. I can't give a good answer as to why in a lot of them they're so hyperbolic. Some of it is just
a lot of writings are virtue signaling to other people in their field.
Not all of the writings.
I think when you write, things are going to tend to be a bit more hyperbolic.
Well, also, yeah, that's because they're alone talking to themselves as opposed to having to talk to another person. Yeah, sure.
But that's like in any text that you read of like anything, it's going to be like a bit
right. But then you get into this problem of what's the real opinion? Is it what you write to yourself, or is it what you'll say to someone else? And I generally think what people write is a truer showing of their beliefs than what they're willing to debate in a conversation.
Oh, I
don't know if there's such a thing. I don't know.
Oh, really?
If there's like the true belief.
Yeah, I completely disagree, because I honestly believe what you write down is based on, especially when you're talking about cultural issues, what you feel at the time definitely controls how you write. And that might not be your complete feeling, because again, every human being changes their feelings in a matter of seconds. So when a person is writing, there could be a situation, because again, a lot of these writings were like the late 70s, early 80s, which if you remember that time, there was a huge cultural clash. There wasn't riots or anything. Well, there were riots, true, but not as severe. There was a huge culture clash and an identity crisis coming from the 60s as to what are we, and what are things that are seen as progress, and what are things that are covered up as progress but are actually not changing.
Yeah, but like if someone wrote, if Kimberly Crenshaw or Derek Bell or somebody wrote something that I thought was incendiary or very extreme, and I asked them about it, and they said, oh, well, that was my opinion then, but it's changed now, I would accept that if they said it's changed, but they don't ever say their opinion has changed. They'll say, oh, well, you didn't really understand me, or that's not really what I said. Like, there's always like this weaselly kind of worm like dance that goes along with this.
Well, Adam,
exactly, it goes along with everyone.
Adam, do you remember, I think a couple months ago, I sent you a video of Kimberly Crenshaw giving an interview, or not an interview, giving a speech about not a speech, panel, sorry, about CRT to a bunch of people. Were you able to watch that video? Or no?
I don't recall watching it. I may have and just don't remember it, but
okay.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I'm like sad that if I didn't watch it, like it sounds interesting.
In that video, you'll start noticing that I don't think she's ever going to say like I was absolutely wrong here, because at the time that a lot of the writings were being made, I'm not going to say that they're right, but I'm not going to say they're wrong. It was more like trying to figure out, especially on the legal side, how certain things were being converted to, I guess, avoid laws, but they didn't exactly fix the problem. So at that time, I can't say that she was 100% wrong, but I'm very sure that she has a different view on certain. Well, no, she even said it in the video I sent you.
If Kimberly Crenshaw comes out and says, I have a different view about something than I did whenever I wrote this thing, I'm fine accepting that. But you have to own up to that. And I'm not, especially not with her, willing to give her any charitability or assume some sort of like good faith way beyond like, oh, she probably changed her opinion. I'm not going to assume that, especially when, you know, the example that we bring up like every day on the show is the Joy Reid interview, where she, like, Joy Reid asked her as a joke. She's like, oh, is CRT socialism?
Marxist, yeah.
Or is Marxist, yes. And Kimberly Crenshaw dodges the fuck out of the question. It's like incredible.
Wait, did you see her conversation with Mark Lamont Hill where she kind of addressed that? Because Mark Lamont Hill also addressed that in his conversation with James Lindsay.
Can I make an observation real quick?
I'd actually see that comment.
It's just that what I noticed specifically, because I went ahead and even in my own school system now, people found out I was an activist. Now they're asking me to deal with CRT, trying to come into our schools. So I had to read all these documents. Some of them are Kimberly Crenshaw's. But what I just keep noticing when you try to debate this thing is it's almost just like just how religion can be kept like intentionally vague so that you can always say, well, that's not the real thing. That's not what God meant. That's what CRT seems to be. Because it's like, well, that's not really, well, you know, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. You need to talk to these other CRT people. You know, it's like, I got a video on my channel of this lady did a presentation on the root, and she's done TED Talks on CRT. I think her name is like Brittany Cooper or something. And she's a Rutgers professor. And one of the things that she stated was that CRT is an accurate depiction of history, including things along the lines of suggesting that people of color did not engage in any form of imperialism, in any warfare or violence between themselves, that they were peacefully sailing the oceans. Like, this is the real history that she's supposedly trying to teach everybody. And that's just obvious nonsense. Like, there's no truth to that.
I want to respond to that with, can you give me one social field that doesn't have that type of extreme somewhere in something that is actually still seen as mainstream somewhere in that field? Almost every social field.
I just want to back that comment up, and like, I think there's some stuff in CRT that I've heard that I think is extreme.
Yes.
But like, even the system, I'll just point fingers at Adam and Sitch, even the systems of liberalism that you guys accept and just sort of like, you are the fish in water. If you go and look at the readings of the guys who actually like developed this stuff, like it has all the same elements that you're currently criticizing. Like, all
it just
the things
comes out like they're making it up as they go along.
Well, okay,
yeah,
so
but that's true of like every single economic system. It's true of every single philosophy. It's true of every single religion. When you go and you start like actually examining things, I just feel like you guys are just having a meta conversation on just human knowledge and conversation and sort of communication. But then CRT is like the new thing that is like, you know, counter hegemonic and threatening. So we're going to like focus on that. But like the things that you're like deliberating upon are present in every single human being.
So let me see if I understand what you're saying. Are you saying like, so we've been kind of getting to this series of debates with Sargon about the origin point of liberalism and the assumptions that the Enlightenment thinkers made. And so I've been, unfortunately, to my chagrin, been listening to an audiobook of John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, and he spends like the first 3 fucking hours of this audiobook are just him talking about, like, debating with monarchists and about, whether Adam's existence in the Garden of Eden, does that show that God wanted us to live through like a liberal society or a monarchical society? And so, like John Locke, and I assume a lot of other Enlightenment thinkers, were basing the foundations of liberalism on God and on Adam in the Garden of Eden and all these like things that I don't think obviously really happened. And so, sure, I guess you could attack liberalism on that basis of what these academics believed, hundreds of years ago. But I think what Adam brought up in the conversation with Carl is that, well, we don't need that origin point anymore because we've had liberalism as a system has existed for hundreds of years, and it's based on, like, we can just say, like, this works. We're looking at this works, even if whatever the academic literature was based on hundreds of years ago is bullshit. With CRT, we don't have any experience to say, we've had hundreds of years of CRT in practice, and it doesn't match up necessarily with what these academics are saying about it. We don't have any of that. So all we can rely on is, well, what did these acacademics say, and what kind of claims are they making?
We do have a little bit.
I guess that's why, I guess all I'm saying is, and some people, the chat predictably is going into the whataboutism, bringing up their NPC.
Well, you did do whataboutism, but I just
no, it's not a whataboutism. He's trying to explain a concept by using something we've referenced in the past. So it's not whataboutism.
No, I'm just saying that, that's why I get very bored. And I'm not trying to interrupt too much because it's the conversation between you guys, but I get very bored with these types of conversations because it seems like we're not actually discussing where there could be merit or not to these things. We're sort of just we're just nitpicking.
I understand what you're saying.
Wait.
You get what I'm just trying to say? I'm not trying to go real harsh or anything.
Well, I'll back on that.
Go ahead.
Because almost every person that has a criticism of CRT and actually has read it, 90% of it, you'll never hear somebody have a problem with about it. It's usually a collection of a certain number of quotes from the older works that have so many people angry. And unfortunately, those quotes
disagree. But go ahead.
Modern CRT is by no means better. Not even close.
The quotes from the older works get adapted by certain people who are quote unquote CRT adjacent, and then that becomes, depending on who you are, CRT.
Right. So
because CRT itself, I haven't seen anybody argue the effectiveness of laws as pertaining to whether or not personal experiences should be included into certain aspects because the law has shifted away. There hasn't been major conversations about that, but there has been tremendously big conversations on Derek Bell's work from the late 70s.
Right. So let me see if I understand Faraday's point first, is that you're saying, why are we focusing on this academic literature? Why don't we just point to things we like about it and things we don't like about it? Right. That's what you're arguing.
Well, I think that the conversation, and I mostly notice this with leftists. Whenever they want to attack something, they'll start nitpicking.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just sort of I'm not trying to get too involved in the depth of what you guys are talking about, but it just does seem like a lot of times we end up nitpicking the particulars of this and that. I don't know.
Right. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Really well, I'll explain to you where I'm coming from. So before I had before I started reading CRT and started to look into it, understanding CRT and reading it was, I think I had that similar aha moment that I think people like Rufo and James Lindsay and other people claim to have had, which is that I'm just walking around here like a liberal saying, I don't understand this woke shit. Why the fuck are all these liberals walking around saying this horribly anti-liberal shit? It makes no sense to me. These people are fucking stupid. Why are they constantly making anti-liberal arguments? And then I read CRT and I go, oh, it all makes sense. It's because it is anti-liberal. And you have this contingency of leftist academics who don't like liberalism and are trying to do everything they can to fuck it over. And all this woke shit reflects that, whether the people who are promoting it or not are aware of what they're promoting. And so that's why I'm specifically diving into the origin points of CRT and what the founders wanted. Because to me, even if you have people now who are kind of just repeating the CRT criticisms or repeating a lot of wokeness, they're unintentionally, what they're doing is, and this is the metaphor I used in the past. I said that with a lot of wokeness and with CRT especially, is that you had these leftist academics who created diagrams for bombs that would destroy liberal society. However, they ripped the little name off the top of the diagram that says this is a bomb that will destroy society, and they just passed these diagrams around to everyone. So now all these people on the left who are liberals are building these fucking liberal society destroying bombs, and they're making them and they're getting ready to blow them up, and they have no fucking clue what they're doing. So that's why I'm diving deep into the academics and saying, look, this is what you're doing. You just don't realize it.
It was another point.
I don't totally disagree with you. I mean, I think that, there is a sort of, I don't like the way that people commonly use this word, because I think that Jordan Peterson butchered this word, but there is a
postmodern neo-Marxist.
No, I was going to say the word postmodern. There is a sort of like postmodern bent that people take to these sorts of ideologies or ideas. That I do find disturbing. The thing I was going to ask Dialogue is, do you think that there are areas in which, and not just like nitpicking the literature, but do you think there are areas like, a big criticism is that people have become very prone to just like hating whitey. Do you think that this shit can get a bit extreme at times? Because I personally do.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
But like I'm with you that I see the value in it, and that's why it frustrates me when I see it turning into extremism.
What is the value? Tell me so I can know.
Well,
there's no value because it's a manipulated argument.
If we were going to talk about CRT, we could talk about like the origins of our culture and how that culture does like play out a particular hegemony, which does benefit a certain people. We could talk about like power dynamics. Foucault talked about that. But then there's a way in which you can read or there's a way in which you could read into Foucault and him talking about power relations and power dynamics and then just become a psychopath. And then to just say things like everything is power dynamics. And so we need to siege the system and we need to become cultural revolution. And it's like, okay, slow the fuck.
So
are you saying that an entire ideology revolving or centralized around power and that's nothing else is moral except power is going to attract sociopaths? Is that what you're saying, Faraday speaks?
No, I'm saying that yes, there are extremists that will like, and maybe even Foucault himself maybe felt that way, but there's something there that should be examined. But yeah, like extremists are going to latch on to things and they're going to take things to the utmost. Can
I both address you and Sitch in one of the arguments that I think has been misunderstood?
Yeah.
And that is like, we'll go straight to whiteness.
No.
So and this might answer your question.
By the way, that's a concept that I think that there's merit in, but then people like become extremists.
Even before we talk about it,
whiteness is all the good stuff, though, right? I mean, whiteness is like punctuality.
Tell me about whiteness, DA.
Let's define it.
So whiteness in academic circles is pretty much the idea that I think like mid to late 17th or 18th century, there was a desire to not just make skin color white, because obviously you didn't want to bring in the Irish, the Italians, certain Germans. You didn't want to make it just skin color. You wanted to make it certain other aspects of society would be labeled as white. So it was moving away from just skin color. So that started catching on, and obviously the counter to that would be, okay, well, everything that we're trying to make white would stay white, so whatever's not white would instantly be black. And it did three things. One, it preserved the slave system to explain why slavery still existed in the United States, while most of the rest of the Western world was like, hey, slavery is wrong. It was no, we're not just enslaving people for our own profits. These people are not culturally white, and are also they don't have the aspects of white.
What are the aspects of white? Let's get down to that.
I'm pretty sure every one of you have screeched and gotten angry at that one
Judith Cates chart.
Smithsonian picture of it saying aspects and assumptions of whiteness, but everybody forgets the words aspects and assumptions and just sees the word whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
But what they mean by aspects and assumptions are things that people assume to be white. And everything not on that sheet are things that people don't assume to be white. And that was when white was created. I'm not talking about everybody
but
now.
Right.
No, I understand
What,
using
white
that
people
language.
are
Wait,
punctual, white people are
I understand using that language. And you say, oh, it says aspects of assumptions. So I understand you saying, oh, see, they're saying people assume that this is part of whiteness, and they're just saying that we should not.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, then what are you saying?
I'm not saying people assume that is whiteness. It's saying this is the assumption of whiteness. Not just people assume it. This is the assumption. This is what.
Okay, so but the
Like
issue
the way the Virgin
created.
Mary was assumed into heaven, we assume whiteness into our beings. Is that the type of assumption we're referring to?
whiteness is just cultural hegemony, dude. It's not.
Dialogue
it's not some
didn't even say punctuality. I'm very disappointed.
I wanted to make a point really quickly, just to point out that if something is so ethereal that like we can't make a good answer about, well, this CRT is the right CRT and that CRT is not the right CRT, maybe it shouldn't be taught in schools and it shouldn't be pumped into curriculums until it's actually been leveled off into something that can actually be defined. And if these people are just extremists, why isn't anybody policing them? Because they don't. The only reason anybody ever talks about them is, well, that's an extreme view, or we don't really agree with them. But nobody holds them accountable. They're just allowed to keep saying it. It's the same crap that feminists say. It's the same, all of them. Which CRT?
Which CRT are you talking about? Are you talking about the legal CRT that is pretty much, and this is why so many people hate leftists for saying this, but it's the absolute truth. Are you talking about the CRT that is in most college level courses for the legal area, which is what most people on the left are pointing to for CRT? Or are you talking about that thing that is starting to be revealed as an all-encompassing, whatever I hear that is race connected, I'm connecting to the word CRT? Because those are two completely different conversations. And
there's more than just that. There's different aggregate. You know.
What I've seen people do, because this is how they try to maneuver it into schools, is they'll suggest, well, we're not teaching CRT because instead they're teaching anti-racism, which is just like Ibram X. Kendi and D'Angelo finding a way around saying CRT, even though everything they're saying basically echoes what most of the other people in academia say about CRT anyway. It's just it's a play on words at that point. I mean, if you're saying which CRT, well, that kind of only comes back to what I'm saying. It's like now we're like, well, are we talking about Lutherans? Are we talking about Catholics? Now we have denominations of the religion.
No. The reason why I'm asking you. The reason why I'm asking you is because, and I gotta point it out, there is a section of the population that deliberately wants to encapsulate every negative thing they can think of into CRT.
So dialogue. Can I ask you? You brought up white privilege. Is white privilege CRT?
I don't think I said white privilege, but it.
Well, you brought up whiteness, which is the concept of whiteness has to do with white privilege. Yeah.
And I did
not exactly.
One final point about
whiteness. So whiteness is whiteness CRT.
Yeah.
Okay, so they do talk about whiteness in school and stuff like that. So isn't that CRT in school?
Wait, things can be adapted from something, but it doesn't mean that it is.
Well, that's why I asked you specifically. I asked you a question. I said, "Is whiteness CRT?" You just said yes, whiteness is CRT. I said they talk about whiteness in school. Therefore, CRT is in school, but now you're saying no, that's not. Now it's not CRT.
I'm saying it in the sense of like just because a certain aspect is adapted from CRT doesn't mean that the way that it's being used.
Let me ask you again. Is whiteness CRT?
I genuinely don't know how to answer that question because you're giving a yes or no to something that has multiple variables.
That are you asking itself to me.
Are you asking if CRT created?
Do you mind if I step in for a second?
Sure.
So what he's saying is that, like, okay, he's giving you a very measured, like his very measured.
Don't make excuses for him, okay, Faraday. You give me your.
Why
you
give me
your opinion, okay?
Look,
I clearly asked him a question. He didn't answer the question.
Why
Okay,
do you have
now
such a
you
problem
want to
with
come in
that?
here.
Because you-
Now you want to come in here and
Why do you
answer
have
the
such a
question
problem
for
with
him, Faraday. Don't do it, okay?
Then why do you have such a problem?
There's no
Yeah,
way
'cause
for me
listen,
to point
why are
out
you
how
limiting
this
my
is a wrong
free speech?
question without giving a
Why are
whataboutery.
you limiting
But we're
my
not
free
allowed to
speech?
give whataboutery, so I'm kind of cornered.
Well,
This is a
listen,
yes or no
what
question.
aboutism is dodging the question?
Listen. I was looking up something for the previous white chart, which we're going to go back to. But before we do that, okay, Adam, I don't fully understand your question. Are you asking if the concept of whiteness is a core concept of CRT? Are you asking the core concept of whiteness arise out of CRT? What exactly are you asking?
Yes, yeah, all of the above was
okay.
Is whiteness related to CRT?
Yes or no?
Well, okay, I'll answer for you. I can literally answer the question.
Okay,
wait,
thank you, Sitch. This is why it's a Sitch and Adam show, because I get lots of good information out of Sitch. Here we go.
So the answer is CRT did not create the concept of whiteness. No. However, CRT does use the concept of whiteness constantly.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. That's the yes or no answer. Yes.
Very okay. Excellent.
Well, wait, that doesn't answer, because he asked, "Is whiteness in CRT?" and then said because whiteness is used in schools, that means CRT is in schools.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, right.
You see, like the flaw in that question.
Okay, so your answer we could say is, well, it's true that CRT uses whiteness, and this concept of whiteness is used in school. However, CRT didn't create the concept of whiteness. They're just using it from something else. So therefore, it wouldn't necessitate that whiteness being taught in schools is necessary.
Well, that's fine. Then we can completely do away with the argument of whether or not CRT is in school or we need CRT in school, because I think a lot of people are just offended by the concept of whiteness.
Yes,
being in school.
Exactly. So CRT has become a catch-all for a lot of woke race shit that people don't want to.
So we can have a conversation about whether or not it's good to have this idea of whiteness and create negative stereotypes of white people in schools. I don't think it's a good idea.
So no, I agree with you 100%.
Okay, wait, but he just wait. I gotta address.
Okay, you go.
Now, did you notice that he just said, we don't want this concept of whiteness or talking about white people in schools? Did you caught that?
No. He said creating negative white stereotypes.
I said creating negative stereotypes about white people in schools.
Now, I just explained what the creation of the aspects and assumptions of whiteness was.
No, you didn't. You named none of them.
You're wrong. Okay. This is what I looked up. So one of the oldest prints of the chart that I found, because I actually knew about this chart in my P plus P equals R video way before the Smithsonian ever pulled it up. And the original chart doesn't say aspects and assumptions of whiteness. The original chart says components of white culture, values, and beliefs. And this is the paragraph that precedes it. It says, it's by Judith Cates, and it says, our education system expresses what, and her interest is pedagogy. Pedagogy, yes.
Right.
She's a pedo. And she's all about trying to figure out how to teach people. And this paragraph says, our educational system expresses white cultural beliefs by valuing standard English and the written tradition. Rarely are students graded on their ability to use oral communication as a way of demonstrating their learning. White culture also emphasizes the scientific method, which focuses attention on quantitative research. White society's emphasis on credentials, titles, and professional positions as signs of status and power have led to a proliferation of bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees. University curricula determine that the history, music, art, and literature of Western civilization are the essential ingredients for being educated. In short, universities and other educational institutions are entirely based on white cultural norms and values. The demographics of students, professors, and administrators show that colleges and universities are predominantly white in population as well. More often than not, people of color who study or work there are seen as less qualified, labeled as high risk, and designated as requiring special attention.
Wow. Okay. Whiteness sounds pretty fucking racist.
So wait a minute. Her point is, and then she has the chart. Okay. And what her point is, and what she goes on in the rest of the paper, is she's saying, and a lot of the other people, like Patricia Biddle, who did the People's Equals Our stuff, were saying, is that these are the aspects and assumptions of white culture that are believed to be normative and good for everyone. However, we shouldn't necessarily say that these things should apply to non-white people, and that there could be alternative ways of gaining knowledge or of seeking value that we should look into. That's what the point of the chart is. And to me, that's not only is that wrong, but it's fucking crazy in the modern day to associate these things with race.
With a race, yeah, it's totally
Exactly.
it's race. It's racist and it's bad for society.
With race, it's associating with
it's not associating with a person. I literally said in my first.
It's literally says white culture.
We can even divorce it from the skin color. I think inherently it's going after Enlightenment era liberalism.
And labeling it and saying that there's a racial component to it. It's complete.
I think the whiteness thing is a secondary component that's really just there to be a motivator to get people racially charged in order to fight against the deeper problem they see, the liberalism, Enlightenment era liberalism.
I think you're entirely correct.
Yeah,
it is about liberalism, and she actually kind of brings up her whole the paragraph after this directly is her complaining about rugged individualism. So that definitely
it's challenging the idea that liberalism and individualism will solve every problem when dealing with race, especially problems that weren't created through liberalism.
But why do we have individualism to race?
Can I pause really quick?
Yes.
What dialogue always said, I think there's some merit to it, but I don't know that that's what the academics were actually saying or not. And I also, keeping in mind, I haven't read it myself. I'm getting all of this.
There's no benefit that is accrued to attaching these values, which are generally positive, normative values that everyone in America agrees with. Attaching that to white is so incredibly destructive. And then saying that, listen, we shouldn't hold non-white people up to these standards and values, or that we need to adopt or look into quote unquote non-white standards and values. To me, that's just so crazy.
No, a good. Okay,
that's insane.
I have a question for Sitch.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand, and I do like I don't know if I could say I'm critical. It is problematic to call it whiteness, right? Because people have such an association with that, and I don't know how you solve that problem. But if there was a sort of cultural hegemony that emerged out of Europe during the colonial period and spread itself across the world, and it created certain negative aspects for other people in the world, especially people that it colonized and then enslaved. And then hundreds of years later, we still see the effects of that. How can we talk about that? What term instead of white or whiteness should we use?
Well, race consciousness race
so
consciousness
we should just say it's America that's
black people can be American.
Curious. If you reject the premise, then just say you reject the premise. If you don't reject the premise, then how would you describe?
They are starting to create their own words for it. So for the longest, if you read through a lot of the text CRT challenges the idea of colorblindness, but it completely points out the ideas of colorblindness and how it's used that they are against. Now, instead of saying, hey, okay, let's see what aspects of colorblindness are they talking about, there was this huge challenge against colorblindness until CRT, a lot of people in CRT started explaining what they were talking about. So instead of challenging that, because they knew at that point, like, you really can't challenge what they're talking about, it's the usage of colorblindness, not actual colorblindness, people started creating the words racism blindness. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, people started saying, well, why don't you say racism blindness, and applying it to text long before racism blindness.
You're adding things in the script. I'll come back to you in a second, Caleb.
Thank you.
But let me just address this first. You're adding things in the script that were not there, because when CRT literature comes out against colorblindness, they're not just coming out, and they're pretty explicit about this, so I don't know where you're getting this from. They're not just coming out saying color blindness is used by Republicans to attack affirmative action programs. I've read tons of literature, including Judith Cates and Patricia Biddle, who make this argument. This is all over my People's Equals R video. So I understand that argument. The CRT people explicitly don't think colorblindness is as even possible or even desirable. And that's because, a completely different argument.
No, because there's two, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm really getting tired. I think one of them written on it, I got to remember the book, but he literally started pointing out, like, okay, we have to establish what we mean by colorblindness. So a lot of the texts before were saying colorblindness because the people reading it were in the courses already understanding what they meant by colorblindness. A lot of them, many of them were saying, like, of course, we're not talking about just not seeing skin color. We're talking about a very specific usage of that word that is becoming counterproductive, if not malicious.
Yeah, because Republicans were using it in the 80s to attack affirmative action.
It wasn't just Republicans.
It was
that's
primarily
why. That's why. If you know, no. If you notice, a lot of people started going after Bill Clinton for doing.
Well, that was years later, but
well, it wasn't just Bill Clinton, but like over the years, it wasn't just Republicans. Yes, Republicans took the ball and ran with it, and I think there's a pretty good argument of why Republicans took the brunt of that. But it started going more and more into how certain aspects of the law were used and how it was, I guess, using colorblindness to ignore jarring problems that creates discrepancies in growth and development of different communities.
So I think the problem is that social science, particularly before it was polluted by all of this crap, already knew that it's actually proven that if you attack somebody's group frequently and often, you will get a retaliatory reaction in the same direction. In other words, racism begets racism, sexism begets sexism. It literally creates that problem. And the way that all of this is being executed is literally creating the opposite of the intended effect. This real solution was stop judging people by the color of their skin, stop judging people by their gender. And it was working. Okay. I remember. Yes, it was.
No, it was
working slower than people want.
It's not. I got to kill this right now. There was a lie about the 80s, 90s, early 2000s that we were in some sort of harmonious world where no one ever talked about the aspects of racism and everything else. No, what happened was, and what we can genuinely point to, was that African Americans were in very, very small, isolated communities to where they did not interact with most white America. That's why if you look at, if you look at many of the studies where they said, hey, where they talked to white people and black people and said, hey, white people, how many black friends do you have? And white people will say, almost like 50, I think it was like 90% of them said they had at least one black friend. But then they went to the black community and said, how many white friends do you have? And like 10% of them said they had a white friend. There was a serious segregation there that wasn't legal segregation, which is why they challenged the legality of many of, like, they're saying like laws aren't the reason why much of this is happening, but there were two completely isolated communities, so there wasn't too much. Well, a good example of this, there'll be a 90 or 99 or 98% white community saying I've never seen racism in our community, and that happened a lot.
Okay.
So now that we have social media, and everyone is speaking, a lot of issues that were contentious are being seen by more and more people.
I don't think that's it at all. I think that what they're doing is essentially people who buy into this, just like any other religious inquisition, if they haven't found the devil, it just means that they haven't looked hard enough. It means I need to, dig a little deeper, and then I'll find the evidence for the evil devil that I'm looking for, because I'm a professional witch hunter / grifter like Ibram X. Kendi. If you convince yourself that there's racism under every goddamn rock, you will find it. And that's why you end up with ridiculous things like, literally blogs being written about, reviewing Godzilla movies and finding ways to make them racist. It's silly. That's the reason why you think you're finding more. The truth is that it was on the decline. You can see that even just by watching the participation in the actual racist organizations. And the Ku Klux Klan and the neo-Nazis were regulated to being pathetic, stupid little organizations that they were. And
Yeah,
then
because
the wokeness shows
you
up,
moved
and
the
then all of a
goalpost on
sudden
what
there's this
racism is.
surge in
Well,
all
no,
of these problems.
There is
we genuinely moved the goalpost of what racism is, made it so extreme it's almost a cartoon character, and then claim that because that cartoon character can't be seen everywhere, then the effects of racism
it's literally
is
the
almost
exact
gone.
wait a minute, it's literally the exact opposite of that. Okay, we lived in a country where racism was cartoonishly evil for hundreds of years, and then once society
I would even say
gets
it appears to be cartoonish to us because of the
right,
era we live
by
in.
our standards, okay,
Yeah.
So wait a minute, we lived in a society where we had this, by our standards today, cartoonishly evil racism via slavery, via segregation, via the KKK. And when our society does away with all that, it's the people still crying racism that move the goalpost now and say, whoa, wait a minute, we need to talk about systemic racism, we need to talk about implicit racism.
If
And I think addressing I think the issue with what V was saying and what you were saying, Dialogue always, is that there could have, both these realities could be true. Society as a whole could become far less racist as a whole, and still there could be lots of problems with economic segregation and economic disparity among Black Americans. Those things can both be true. And so that's the problem, is that we don't need to throw out the colorblindness just because we have economic issues.
And okay, so two things. One, you literally just explained how systemic racism works. You literally just explained it, because systemic racism, I'm not gonna just repeat what you said. That is systemic racism, and systemic racism
is a boogeyman.
I guess I think it's an oversimplification of a cause is what the CRT systemic racism is. Just because that does happen does not necessitate the cause is racism.
I think you maybe we can agree this. Systemic racism is one of the worst named terms in fucking 1000%. English, because the problem is that it was basically designed from its origin point by, I think, Stokely Carmichael was the one who really pushed systemic racism, or institutional racism was called back then. Is just, if you look at any time there's a disparity, an economic disparity between white and Black people, and you say that's systemic racism, you gain no useful information by calling it that. That doesn't mean anything, because we don't know why the disparity occurs. But by calling systemic racism, it puts in everyone's mind, well, it must be because of racism. That's
no. I can give you an example. Can I give an example of systemic racism that explains how this works and why it's very different from I mean, it's evolved over the years because racism has evolved over the years. So Stokely Carmichael, yes, he did. I don't think it was Stokely. I think it was somebody right before him. But yes, he did really bring a lot of light to institutional racism. But if you believe that the person that, and I can't go through all of Twitter, so there's going to be people taking it to its extreme. I know this. But if you look at what the academic argument about systemic racism is versus what Stokely Carmichael is saying, there's an extra element added to today's version of systemic racism, which, for example, can be used in the sense of, yes, there's not a sign saying Blacks keep out anywhere in the United States. We've definitely removed any sign saying that. But that doesn't mean that multiple communities have overvalued or devalued certain neighborhoods in order to preserve something that was already created.
Preserve what? What you said something. Preserve what that was already created?
Segregation.
Right. So the example you've given shows why systemic racism is a terrible label, because what you described would fall under systemic racism. And that example you gave, especially if it was intentional, I would agree. That's a racist fucking act. But
no, not intent.
Well,
it's not intent.
How are they devaluing?
It's not intentional. It's literally cause and effect. The effect of something will continue.
You did say in order to preserve. So that implies intent.
Okay. When I say in order to preserve, I mean in the sense of like at the time of the changes in the values, there was an intent there.
Right.
But now today, there's not people sitting there and going, let me change the value of my house to keep Black people out. So if you, for example, and I said this before, if you wait till 4 years after the last state was ratified, chart grafted, and valued, in order to implement a certain percentage of the population to compete, there's going to be a natural segregation that occurs, regardless of whether or not like there's a racist intent there. And the problem is that that segregation is exacerbated by so many other different decisions, both recent and past.
Right.
So why is it then that the current activism instead, if there is any signs going up, they're actually the no whites allowed signs, and we should have segregated spaces free of white people on college campuses, and that
Because idiots
somehow
exist.
this is going to improve the situation?
But that's
No.
but
Because
part,
there is
part of
an
the problem is that
extremist
the idiots
element to this
have
stuff.
taken over.
Because
the
there's
No,
movement.
they
extremist
haven't.
element
No,
to
they
They very much have. I mean,
they
when it
haven't.
was
There
the
are-
largest organization associated with BLM, which turned out to be a fucking scam by the people running it. The idiots have taken over.
Wait, hold on. Because and I think you already know this. This is why I don't know why you're making this argument. Almost everybody will tell you there's BLM the movement versus BLM the organization.
Even BLM the movement was
God.
fucking stupid. Who
No, it
is the
wasn't.
poster child of BLM? They had the perfect
but
case.
there's-
I was actually
but
going to use this.
Sitch,
I was actually going to bring this up in our conversation with Kurt about how this stuff is just organic and not planned. They had literally the perfect case. Tamir Rice, the perfect fucking case for the cops acting totally crazy and shooting a black kid because he had a toy gun in a fucking drive-by. The cops shoot the kid. But no, they all instead fixated for whatever reason. The media fixated on fucking Michael Brown, who turned
You
out
said for
to be
whatever
fucking
reason, and you
guilty.
answered what reason. You literally said for whatever reason, and then said the reason. The media focused on Mike Brown.
No, but
And where
it's-
media-
the
wait, wait,
media
where media-
follows the crowd.
No,
the media was
in-
hyping
in-
the fuck up. When
this particular case-
when Michael Brown Ferguson was going on, that's when I was avidly watching MSNBC all day and was very much in the liberal bubble. And I thought, this is weird because Al Sharpton every fucking day would have on his show another instance of, a white cop shooting a black person. And I thought, it's really weird that they're fixating on Michael Brown of all things, because this seems like the flimsiest case. And yet that was the case that was getting all the attention. The media didn't create that out of the ether. That's what was drawing people in for whatever reason, and the media was following. And that's what BLM stood around. And that was one of the dumbest fucking cases for them to stand around.
Okay,
I think
so-
they did jump the shark when they started walking around with signs of Joseph Rosenbaum over their heads. Like,
Well, that
Yeah.
too, but
I
There was
gotta
a-
go soon. Can I get some last words before I go?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I got to go in a minute too.
And then I got.
didn't realize how late it was.
And the end of this got heated, but I do appreciate you guys having me.
fuck,
on.
I mean,
This is not heated. What? Come on, this is barely
Oh, it's
anything.
not personal.
Yeah.
Well,
Just pass it.
I think that like on certain topics like this, in my frustration is, I do think that there's merit to some of the arguments that I hear from CRT. I don't like the term whiteness per se, but I do think that when I hear that term and I hear that explained in a nuanced way, I'm like, yeah, that has some merit to it. I get where that's coming from. Do I think that like the BLM movement and the organization, like, now, first of all, the organization was a fucking scam, obviously.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the movement, does it get crazy? Well, yeah, like I was explaining earlier how like this woman, like in this recent shooting, was like literally terrorized by this guy, but simply because the fact that he's a black man and he got shot by the cops, we're gonna like lionize him and like treat him like he's such a great person. And literally the woman is like in the street with her kids and she's like, no, he's a piece of shit and he tried to fucking kill me. Like, you shouldn't be lionizing him. And they're like, well, you're not dead, so shut the fuck up, bitch. Like, that's toxic as fuck. I agree. I also don't like academia. I don't like the Ibram X Kendi shit. I agree. But I just like, I get frustrated with these conversations because it's like, we just want to have the culture war and we just want to go back and forth. And like, we never want to look at like, well, what might actually be said here that's like useful. And that's what I meant earlier about nitpicking. It's like, well, what's actually useful?
Well, we're not
Like,
doing any of that, though. You're accusing us of doing something. We have nuanced
it's-
conversations about this every
well, you
week.
guys-
and
well, you
you're
guys
acting
do.
like we're sitting here just fucking nitpicking.
Well, because it's just the entire conversation in general.
Yes,
like the
by
discourse
other
in
people.
general.
Yes, by other
Right.
people. Yeah.
So anyway, but like, Sitch, what other when you hear what, can you just answer before I go the question I asked earlier? So let's throw out the term whiteness, but like, how else can we talk about that phenomenon?
It
I
depends
described.
what like are you talking about like colonialism? I don't know what exactly
It basically
you're talking
kind
about.
of is colonialism, which sets up a sort of cultural hegemony. Oh, of course, Dylan comes on. Maybe I should just stay on. What the fuck?
Oh, look at this cloud
Um,
chaser here. No, Faraday's on the way out.
I don't care about clout chasing, motherfucker. I barely put out videos. You think I care about clout
Oh,
chasing? I
look,
just like
a
Dylan.
celebrity showed up. I better stick
What
around.
the fuck? I don't care about that. I just like Dylan. I haven't talked to this motherfucker in a while. But
Look, you're so starstruck you forgot what you were saying.
Adam, I've literally hung out with Dylan in person. Dylan ain't shit to me.
You were
Dylan,
talking.
Wow,
You were
nice.
talking
Right to his face.
Right.
Beautiful shit to me.
Damn.
I just like Dylan. He's
Cold-blooded killer right
You were
here.
talking about the
Oh my
nuances of CRT.
If I wanted a clout
tried.
chase, man, I'd be trying to get on air every week. You guys are the big show.
Thank you.
But,
That's not true. But thank you.
Faraday
But
had me
how would-
blocked until 2 days ago. So just
you and I
everyone.
get on each other's nerves, okay? And then your producer
I didn't
says,
block
hey, they wanna
you.
have you did block me.
I blocked you back after you blocked
Yes.
me.
Okay.
This is so
All right.
fucking gay.
Adam, we'll have a conversation later. We should have a private
Well,
conversation.
he's spinning a yarn here. That's
You know
just
what
like
gets on my nerves about? You know what gets on my nerves about Adam is like me and Adam actually like have a lot of agreement, but we never get to that because we just fight.
It's more fun. It's a lot more fun.
It's way more interesting.
No, to answer your question, it should be called
Like,
whatever.
Yeah.
Listen, it should be called whatever the specific concept that is being relayed to. It should not be associated to race. If someone has a problem with colonialism, fine. If someone has a problem with individualism, fine. Just call it that. Just don't call it whiteness.
But wait, then you would literally be targeting what it wasn't created to be. Like you're saying,
oh
like,
my
okay,
God,
I'm
it's so
bothered
racist.
by. Wait,
Hey, so
I'm sorry. Hold
Can
on,
I get-
Adam.
can
No,
I
I
just-
have to ask. I have to ask. Adam, do you either?
Adam, are you racist?
No. Do you
No, not
do you
remotely. I don't like
you
racism.
disagree with the idea that
That white people are a monolith and white culture, according to the chart, is correct? Yes, I do disagree. Wholeheartedly.
get it out?
Yeah.
Get it out. Get it out. Get it out. No, I'm just saying, just get it
How
out.
can
so I
you
ask
not
the
like
question.
this guy, Sitch? This guy's so.
So, do you not agree that there was a time period where where people were genuinely trying to connect actions, beliefs, actually even things to a white culture in early
Of course.
Of
No one ever
course.
denied that.
And
Okay, no.
there was a time when they were trying to create negative stereotypes to blacks and create a
wait.
straw man of black culture too.
No, so my second question is this: do you think that those motivations could create both in and out of the idea consequences that would go further on than just when they were created?
I have no clue what you're asking.
Yeah, I don't. What are you talking
Do,
about?
do you think like the effects of labeling something as white as a positive would make something that is outside of the or something that is seen as
Listen,
outside of that?
you
Okay,
heard.
let me-
You
let
just
me-
heard what Sitch read.
Wait,
He
let-
basically said
Not.
that the concept of whiteness is that white people are racist as fuck. Like, do you want a negative stereotype of like black people are racist? Do you want that stereotype?
Hold on.
Sitch,
Let me
you said-
That's
wait,
not
you
what
said
that's not what
let
Sitch
me
said.
address what.
Wait, Sitch, you said that
okay.
the concept of whiteness means
That's
white
not quite what I
people are
said. But
racist.
that's not quite what I said. But wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So addressing what you said, this is the issue with the whiteness chart and kind of the argument that you're putting forward. If in the 1700s, and this is the problem, if we took the whiteness chart that everyone freaks out about and you took it back in time to 1700s, white people look at that chart and say, that's true. Those are aspects of whiteness. Those black people can't appreciate, blah, blah, blah. everything
Yeah,
that's
it's
on the
racist.
list, right? So that's the problem. Is like, yeah, that idea might have started in the 1700s. Why the fuck are we bringing it back today? And then instead of saying, listen, anyone of any color can associate with any of these normative positive values. Why are we attaching it to whiteness like racist people did 200 years ago? And then just saying, I guess we have to do the opposite of this now because it's whiteness.
Because I can okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
It's
Well,
fine.
is
what bothers me
Faraday
about the
dipping?
whole-
Faraday, are you dipping out? Just so I don't want to leave you hanging here.
No, I can hang on. My girlfriend,
Okay. So-
I can hang on a little bit longer.
Go ahead.
I remember specifically
Hey,
once.
After
go ahead.
after V, Dylan, let's have an introduction. So
Sure. I remember specifically watching, because this is back when we were bringing racists up on Oprah and stuff to make fun of them. Okay, the guy is asked, well, what are you? Are you Irish or German? And the guy literally says, well, I'm a white, red-blooded American. It's a racist construct to call people white in the first place. So perpetuating it is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's why
agree.
when people say, okay, well, well, you're white. I'm like, I don't define myself by my skin color. I'm Irish. I've actually looked into my culture. It's like that. If I was going to look for anything like that, it would be like all of these other aspects of who I am. But instead, you're held to this monolithic concept, and they want you to accountable for things that you had nothing to do with. But it's entirely likely.
Really quick, in Dialogue Always' defense, that's the whole fish doesn't know they're swimming in water concept. I would never define myself that way because that's considered whiteness, in quotes. The skin color is considered the norm. And by the way, I don't buy into this shit. I'm just trying to actually provide
for Black Americans, though, that like.
Can I answer Adam?
Let's pause. Dylan Burns, you finally made it. You finally joined the stream. How's it going, man?
Yes. Sorry, I'm gonna be honest with you. I kept passing out. I was doing an interview very late at night, and the time over here the time zones are crazy. I'm happy to be here, though. Happy to finally be here.
No worries. I'm glad you could make it. So.
By the way, this motherfucker's in Ukraine, like interviewing people.
Yeah, it's daylight there, so that's pretty. Yeah, you're on the other side of the world. You want to
8 a.m.?
Do you just Counterpoints was in here earlier, and he said you dropped the Hippy Dippy podcast or something. So,
yep, I've canceled the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. It is after 2 years we shut it down. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
So.
Good. I don't like hippies. I'm dead against hippies anyway. So I think it's. I think it's
guy like.
I think it's a
the
move.
Mushroom eating fucking artist in LA.
I think it's a step in the right direction. But go ahead, Dialogue. You wanted to say something.
Well, I can give you a way that whiteness directly affects the Black community in a negative way that I think you would agree with. Once I explain it.
Okay. Oh God, this is okay.
Give it to us.
I picture like a 1950s guy telling me, I can tell you a way the Black community affects the white community in a negative way. You want to hear what I have to say? Well, I would say actually I don't want to hear what you have to say.
I want to hear the example.
Go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
So you know how we talked earlier and you said, what about punctuality connected to whiteness?
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah.
And you know how there was a response to that, as in like, okay, if punctuality is connected to whiteness, then that means non-whiteness would be not punctual.
Right.
That is actually adapted by a lot of people in the Black community, and is seen as a cultural thing to not be punctual.
Right.
Do you think that's good or bad?
Can I finish?
Okay, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
No. That is a conversation that is the other side of CRT that doesn't reach the mainstream. We have to eliminate that idea that just because something is viewed as white, it should not be followed or it's negative. So a lot of that's the part of the conversation of CRT that everyone.
But it sounds like you just came on our side, though.
Wait, there are two. Yeah, there's two. Wait, there's two things. First of all, you have to show me that literature because I've literally never seen CRT complain about that. But the second part of that is that's our argument. That's why we don't like the whiteness chart, because it literally reinforces what you're saying.
Yes.
Because they're saying, well, wait. Every chart is not saying that whiteness is good. They're all saying this is why we should challenge.
Why is it whiteness?
Don't associate positive traits with whiteness and then say, listen, we need to be more understanding of non-white people because they might not have these cultural traits. That's crazy.
But you're asking them to eliminate what was created because I guess it creates a negative response in order to argue something else.
I want to take Adam and Sitch's approach now. So because I do have criticisms of it as well. So the term whiteness itself is polarizing. Now, Dialogue, you've heard me talking long enough that I understand the concept and why it's called that. But what the fuck do we do when even just rhetorically? I think this is just rhetorically, and people just get defensive when they hear that. What the fuck do we do rhetorically when the fact that you say that, people hear that, and they're like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do about it? I was born this way. Like, I didn't have any say in this. I didn't do any of that shit. And like, you know what I mean? Like, how are we supposed to get over it whenever rhetorically it's like cryptic?
Well, I mean, rhetorically, whiteness is an awful word.
I'm going to give you an answer that I would say not a lot, or no, you know what? A significant number follow me, but not enough. Don't not get mad at that. Absolutely get mad at that, because what the person has done is they've taken a concept that is supposed to be an overall view of how certain things in society works, and they're trying to take it to you, the individual, which almost every text is trying to say, hey, this is how a system functions to create positives and negatives in a social system, and they're trying to say you yourself fix this, where it's nearly impossible for one person to fix it, or even one person to address it. And I think I answered this the first time I talked to Adam. It'll have to be something that will slowly fix itself over time, or it would have to be a dramatic systemic change. Now that is where what they're calling for revolution, but it would have to be, in order for it to happen in 40 years, it would have to be some sort of dramatic systemic change. So the only other alternative is to just, over time, it's going to slowly fix itself.
What about the term itself, though? So I get what you're saying. And by the way, the revolution thing won't work. It'll just end up in chaos.
Definitely. No, I'm just.
See, yeah, no, and I know that you, I know that you feel that way. I can tell by listening to you. But just to reiterate, but the term itself, how the fuck do we? How else do we talk about it? And that's kind of what I was asking to Sitch.
Yeah, how do we get rid of it?
I got a great idea.
Mm-hmm. What is
there's a thing that we're talking about here, right? There's a core that we're talking about here, right? The Marxists, the hardcore old head Marxists would call it imperialism. But how do we deal with that? Because the term whiteness, it doesn't work.
When you talk about imperialism, that's almost a different animal. When you talk about whiteness, the reason why it's not working is all the things I said earlier. Scientifically, if you do that, you're literally going to shut other people down. That's why Daryl Davis doesn't walk into a Klan rally and start screaming Black Lives Matter and telling everybody that they're white privileged. It doesn't work.
Work is based upon intention.
By the way, I don't know if you know that, but Daryl Davis
work is based upon intention. Maybe the intention isn't to fix the racial problems.
Maybe it's to blow up society.
Okay, so wait. Since we opened the door and we said that whiteness is is not really working, I want to try to do a thought experiment.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Can each of you find a name that you think that would replace the concepts of what whiteness would say, and
Marxist.
American.
I'll try to explain to you how it will be manipulated back into this conversation again.
Well, first of all,
that's kind of nitpicking, though. Like,
I think you're denying, DA. I know you have the best of intentions at heart, but I really think you're denying the racist intentions of this entire critical race theory project. Like, it really is about. It really is about creating negative stereotypes about white people to get even for the negative stereotypes of Black people that were created in the 50s and 60s. It's a revenge project. It's critical revenge theory.
We've established that you see that. What I want you to do right now is to give me a way or a word that will cover most of the arguments that you might have seen that you do agree with on CRT, that cannot end us back in this conversation. Because I feel like whatever word is used to replace whiteness or even racism blindness, I've seen it.
Tell me, what do you think the word whiteness is trying to achieve that we have to salvage before I come up with my alternative word for it?
Well, the only reason why I feel it should be salvaged is because it's connected to an actual historical motivation. So, like,
look, there's all kinds of things that are connected to a historical motivation that are awful, like the Holocaust. Okay, like a historical motivation means absolutely nothing.
Hold on, let him finish. Let him explain the reason why he believes that's the case.
Because he just said it was connected to a historical motivation. The end. I don't need more than that. That's ridiculous.
Okay, so
how is it not? Are you defending this?
I've answered. Okay,
Mike, are you defending it?
I'm not defending anything. I just want to give him the opportunity to explain why, out of a certain level of humility of wanting to understand.
Well, no,
a certain level of.
I gave him the answer. He didn't like. So now
you didn't give me an answer. You gave me a ridiculous answer.
Wait, didn't he? Wait, okay, I need somebody else. Did he? Did I not give him an answer, or am I missing?
Give me the importance of something being linked to a historical motivation that is useful in a term like whiteness?
We don't need to answer that question, okay? Because I'll play the game. Okay?
I got an answer.
Which is that
ready.
you say, okay, America. If we want to talk about what whiteness is representing, okay, if we want to talk about it in a positive/neutral way, you could use a word like American culture. And if you want to use a negative term, you'd say something like American cultural hegemony, something like that. Those would be terms that would be more appropriate than using the term whiteness.
I would even say Protestant cultural hegemony.
But it's not just American, though.
There we go.
In terms of what
Catholics are not
DA is specifically talking about, it is American. He's not talking about European, whatever that is.
Okay, I withdraw.
And so, could someone twist that around? I guess, sure, of course they could. But they couldn't twist it around and make it horribly fucking racist and get a bunch of people to be racist.
But I could conceivably imagine you and Adam getting upset about that, or the
and they can make it worse. They can make it anti-American.
Yeah, if they were going to say if they were going to use it as only a negative thing, sure, of course they could. And I'd say, they're stupid.
What is the argument here, though? It's so frustrating.
The argument is that he's saying that any term that is used will be deconstructed or warped in some way that is negative.
As an argument for maintaining whiteness, though. He's basically saying we can't get rid of whiteness because any term that we bring in will just be twisted away. So we're stuck with it.
I'm saying I'm more than okay, I'll toss it out. Let's just throw whiteness away. Now, I want to know how we have this conversation.
And that's my question. What is the conversation that you want to have?
I think what he's asking is what term are we using instead of whiteness?
What is the conversation that you want to have?
American cultural hegemony would be the negative connotation.
It's not just American. What he wants to know is there has been a historical precedent since Europe exploded technologically and began to colonize the world.
Whiteness doesn't come out of Europe, Faraday.
It does.
Wait,
no, it doesn't. Europeans don't consider themselves as a monolith.
Yes. Of course, they've been at war with one another all over Europe for centuries.
That is an American concept that is regulated from slavery.
Sitch, let them finish, though, because the whole American system is adapted from European ideals.
Exactly.
So what we're talking about is how America has adapted European ideas.
Okay, here I have the word then. Liberalism. Congratulations, we've come back to liberalism.
But that's the thing. But
fucking nailed it, Sitch.
Nailed it. So how do you reconcile with the fact that Ibram X. Kendi himself is a liberal and supports liberal values?
Weren't you just complaining about nitpicking earlier,
is
Faraday?
He a liberal? I don't know if that's even true.
I want to say this sentence, and I want to see if it's consistent.
You say the sentence.
So instead of saying whiteness created the idea that white people were allowed, or white people should hold on to slavery because whites were seen as I guess more pure or humanistic than blacks. Now we replace that with liberalism.
Listen again. But this is
the conversation that he wants to have, Sitch. This completely racist conversation.
Wait. You have the term whiteness is so fucking broad, okay, that you can just throw anything under it. Under the sense that you constructed, you just say racism did all that stuff because that's what the answer is.
Well, and that's exactly how they do it too.
Which ends up putting a certain class of people into a position. And by the way, certain white people aren't considered quite white in this situation because class comes into this as well. I'm from Appalachia. Okay,
I'm Eastern European Catholic and also Italian. I was my past was all not white.
And again, that's why so many people say it's white and not white.
Okay, you're Italian. I'm Appalachian, which means we come from Irish, right? We're not the good white people. We're not considered white enough. We're the trashy. A WASP culture, Anglo-Saxon.
We're getting way off topic here. I mean, this is
I am lost.
It is giantly off topic.
There's actually something to it. There's something to it.
Well, I understand there's a big, wide variety in white people. Our whole argument is that variety is being completely shit on by this term whiteness.
No, the idea being that those people weren't considered white.
I don't like the term either. I agree with you. I don't like the term. That's why I was asking dialogue.
The game that's being played here, though, is whiteness is being used to create negative stereotypes about white people.
I agree.
And Dialogue Always has pretty much said this by the examples that he's chosen to use here.
The example,
but
yeah,
Dialogue
the example,
is not giving you the extremist anti-white position. He's trying
he
to say,
is.
like,
no, but
Faraday,
wait, no,
is.
the example that DA gave us is perfect of why I hate the fucking term.
Yes.
Because if what I thought we were talking about when we were talking about whiteness was we were talking about, you know, quote unquote, what are the things that are the aspects of white culture? But the example you gave, the word that should be put there instead of whiteness is just fucking racism.
Racism.
And that's the big problem with this term of whiteness. If we want to redefine the word racism to just be whiteness, that's totally fucked and obviously going to lead us to bad consequences down the road.
And that's the actual movement of the goal.
That is the point. The point is to say that all white people are racist. That's the exact point. It's to place a negative stereotype on all white people.
It's to say that their identity is based on race.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree.
It's dialogue. It is just as.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We didn't invent the term white. We didn't CRT didn't invent the term white.
But it doesn't matter.
No, wait, that's the dodge. That's the dodge right there.
It's totally the dodge. Listen, none of us invented the racist black stereotypes either. None of us were born. But if we came in here and started using those negative black stereotypes, you would have every right to call us fucking racist, and you should. Okay? Who came up with the racist stereotypes doesn't fucking matter.
And in addition to the fact that the only counter effect of everything that's been going on is it's emboldening people of color to be as racist as they fucking want to be, because you're telling them you can't be racist. That's why I did the video about Asian, black versus Asian racism. You got a guy chasing a dude around, calling him the CH word over and over and over again. He gets called out for it. He defends himself by saying he can't be racist.
And the reason I am pissed is because you are here endorsing it. And you would be the first to point me out if I invited someone on my stream who is a white nationalist and was, tacitly throwing around negative black stereotypes and being racist as fuck. You would be down my throat if I didn't say something about it. But yet you're here doing the exact same thing, just completely endorsing these negative white stereotypes and trying to make some academic rigmarole about why it is okay. And I'm not supposed to say anything about it. Well, fuck you. I am going to say something about it.
The other thing that I would add to it is when you pointed out earlier that some of the aspects of CRT are trying to say that perhaps maybe we shouldn't be labeling things like being on time as whiteness because then black people can't do it. Well, the thing is in application, that's not what they're doing. They're not telling black kids to be on time. They're not telling black kids to read better or do better arithmetic. They're trying to change the rules so that those kids will pass even if they haven't learned those critical skills.
It's racism.
I went to school in one of those communities. The culture is totally screwed up. They don't have any activism geared towards getting those kids interested in staying in school. They don't have any activism, centered on changing the culture of those people so that they stop acting like that. And I do say culture because it also affects everybody else who lives in those damn neighborhoods. I grew up there.
It's bad for blacks. It's bad for whites, man. Racism is evil.
Dialogue. Would you agree that there is a toxic element of these things that does perpetuate these sort of defeatist attitudes, but that you were trying to get? You're not trying to highlight those things. You were trying to address the things that are relevant. Am I correct in that statement? Do you agree with that statement?
You're a lot closer, yes. I mean, actually, you're. Oh my god!
Because I have a lot of issues with the way this shit gets talked about.
I don't know. Adam has said so many things that I didn't say. I don't even know if I'm actually having a conversation at this point because I don't know. You have said back to me so many things I genuinely did not say. Okay, I don't know what you're hearing when I speak. I genuinely
I am hearing.
The example you said was very triggering.
So yes, very telling. Yeah.
And this is what I was saying earlier.
Adam was unloading, and it wasn't specifically about you.
Where we just have a dumb fuck dialectics, and we don't actually have a conversation with the people that are in the room. Dialogue's giving you a really nuanced perspective.
Don't cut me off.
Stop making excuses.
Don't cut me off. Let me finish what I'm saying. You can wait 5 seconds. Okay, you can wait.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Dialogue's giving you a nuanced take on
He
this
is.
stuff.
Stop.
No, don't
Just
cut me off.
you're gonna get kicked off. I'm gonna kick you off so fucking fast if you call that. If you say nuance one more fucking time, you try me. You try me. Okay. Listen. The nuance. You want to hear the nuance CRT? You want to hear the nuance CRT take? Here's the unnuanced take. All white people are racist. Here's the nuanced take. Most white people are racist. Okay, there's nothing fucking nuanced here.
Wow, literally never seen.
Okay. That was funny, but that's also not a good faith interpretation of dialogue. Always is point of view. I don't even want to say position. Point of view.
Look,
That's
he
funny as
he
fuck. That was
doesn't
hilarious.
recognize it. I get that.
Who's
I
Brabant?
understand that. Okay,
But
I
then,
can
but
see
then, like,
that.
is it really
Brabant.
effective? Is it really effective to just like shit all over him?
Well,
Is that going to
listen,
help?
Listen.
I love
Racism.
both, by the way.
What am I supposed to
A
do?
said A, so let's go to C. Like, why not actually engage with him? You can actually engage with the nuances of this. And you have the,
That's
you
it.
have
You're
a
out of here,
platform to
buddy.
do this.
That's
You have a
it.
platform to do this.
There's nothing nuanced happening here. Please don't
There
make me
is.
kick. Don't make me kick you off.
I don't want
Dialogue.
To get kicked, man.
I think we're at an impasse. I really do. I think we're at an impasse. Because I don't even think you're even. I don't even think you can
dialogue. My position.
respond
My
to
position.
what I said.
My position is crystal clear. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's definitely crystal clear. It's
Your
just not
position.
anything I said.
Your position. Not clear at all.
Let me explain, because dialogue always. This is the problem, and I guess you don't understand this. You, in a sentence, used whiteness as a synonym for racism.
For racism,
You
yes.
understand that's what got Adam very triggered?
No.
Joe, if what if I used
I-
criminality in a sentence for blackness? How would that make you feel?
It wouldn't be good. Right.
Yes. And you would be
sure.
right to call me a piece of fucking shit if I did that. But somehow you can
Unless
sit
it's
here
a
and
really
do
good
it.
joke.
Somehow you can sit here and do it, and you got Faraday Speaks over here all up your ass telling you about how nuanced
Okay,
you are.
I want to hear dialogue always response to using whiteness as a synonym for racism in the example he provided. Okay, but you understand that that's what happened, right?
No, it's not.
Well, how is it
I'll
not?
try this.
How
I'll
is it
try this.
not?
I'll try this.
We're in a recorded call here.
I'll try this one more time.
Yeah.
I'll repeat what I said earlier in the beginning, and let's just see if I can even get you to repeat back to me what I just said. Whiteness was coined as pointing out the ways that early American culture, tried to dictate or tried to create ideas and perspectives and certain other things as racial. So the term whiteness is pointing out how that movement, how that idea was directly used in America to create many of the cultures and ideas we have today. It does not mean every aspect of it was racism. It means every aspect of it was trying to create a separate system.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be
right.
based on race.
Okay. Here. Okay. This is why this term is dog shit. Okay. Under what you just said, because
Sure.
all you're saying is that that each country has a broader normative culture that they create, and that the culture enforces itself upon the people. And obviously, if we go back to America in that time period, a large part of the culture had racism or racist elements baked into it via slavery and then segregation. Okay, to use the term whiteness and to refer to every part of that culture is fucking stupid. And it's
Stop, because you're ignoring something that I said right after that. I said, which leads to the creation of blackness, which means the aspects that were not picked up by that idea of whiteness were picked up as an attempt to try to culturalize everything that wasn't in the term white. That's
not what happened. That's not what happened. Okay. Black people were not sitting around saying, what are the concepts of whiteness from my slave owner? I guess
why would they have to sit around and say that? Why wouldn't that just be a result of that?
No, what
why
happens?
Wouldn't it just
no. Oh my God, no. What? First of all, because it's not even true. Because a lot of time, like a big Okay, hold on. You can say, and this is a big problem with any culture It has nothing to do with race. Any culture, especially a poor culture, is going to be an inherently self-destructive culture. Okay, because all culture is self-perpetuating. So if you have a culture that's based around being poor and self-perpetuating, it's obviously going to be self-destructive. And very oftentimes that means that the culture is going to be anti whatever the norms of the culture are. That's why people are not succeeding in the culture.
So wait, you've never heard a black person say, like, if somebody's getting or somebody's doing good in school, you've never ever heard a black person look at that other. Why are you being so? Wait. So you acknowledge? Wait, oh my gosh, and this is why I
know this happens. I'm saying, why are we?
No, you're not just. You're throwing that away in order to say that I'm just saying white people are X. And no, I'm literally saying that there is a cause and effect to these decisions, and the cause and effect can be viewed from both sides of those decisions.
First of all, I don't agree. First of all, I don't agree with the cause that you're laying out, because I think a lot of the black, quote unquote, black culture turning into white culture was something that is relatively recent in American history that stems out of the 60s. Okay. I don't think it existed before then necessarily to the extent that you do. First of all. Secondly, even if what you're saying is true, that's completely fucking irrelevant to what we should be doing right now and what's better for American society to progress forward. Today. And my argument from the beginning of this conversation is that if we want to progress forward, we should do it under the banner of liberalism, which is that we throw out color being associated with this stuff, so you don't have the black kid who's doing well in school getting called white by his friends, because that's going to lead those people to self-destructing and not doing well in our society.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And that's exactly what happens.
I understand that's what you're saying, but I'm telling you directly that is going to not work. And the reason why it's not going to work is because if you're standing in the black community and you go, a black community that literally you can find out was a black community because of decisions made to place people in that community, and you say, oh, you know what? Don't point to the ideas and stuff that literally created this community. Call it liberalism.
Are you saying
no, wait.
You're not going to get the.
You're exactly pointing out my issue with this, because you're associating things that will help you move up in society, like studying, and you're associating that with racist shit that got societies or got black populations segregated. Yes, that got segregated
cause and effect.
Decades and decades ago. Okay, that's what I'm trying to disentangle. I'm saying no, don't associate these things as the same.
It's literally cause and effect, though.
It doesn't matter.
One doesn't.
I don't give a shit why it happens. Of course, it's a completely I'm not.
CRT is explaining why it happens. The entire argument of CRT.
I'm not a monster, and I'm not racist. I'm not stamping around saying fucking black people are stupid and that's why they adopted this. Of course, these things came out of reasons that were because of fucking racism in the past. Obviously, that doesn't matter in what we should do to be productive going forward. I'm not assigning blame here to why things are the way they are. I'm assigning blame to the people who want to change things for the worse going forward.
Yeah.
And also when you're, like I said, when you're in these communities, there's no evil white people that are reinforcing the culture to those kids that they shouldn't complete their education. There's no evil white people telling them to get pregnant before they're married.
There was. Never said there was.
Okay, well, that's the problem. And that's the thing that isn't getting addressed. But we're wasting all of this time telling kids in white neighborhoods that they have privilege or whatever. And we tell the single mom struggling with 5 kids in a trailer that she's the oppressor, when we should be spending some time talking to these kids and keeping them in jobs and keeping them in their education and getting them out of that situation, teaching them why the hip hop culture is actually destroying them. Like I said earlier, there's no activism about that. The only time anybody's interested in anything is when one of these kids finally gets shot by a police officer. That's the only time. This is why BLM is stupid.
It's not true. There's tons of activism within the black community about it.
Let's move. I feel like
the whole stop the violence movement is okay.
We're not going to get anywhere on this. The petitions.
The people that are most critical of negative, the people that are most critical of negative behavior within the black community, drugs, gangs, rap culture, the people that are most critical of that are people within the black community. They're the most critical of that.
But
So why
you
don't
could
we
listen?
see
Listen,
any
you could be
marches or any
completely-
millions being donated to
Wait,
Yeah,
programs?
you don't
Wait,
have
okay.
marches or millions about it. You know what you have? You have every youth pastor on every single street corner trying to get the liquor store out of the community.
And
but they
hold
can't.
up, V Radio, do you think those millions are coming from other black people? Like, do you think the majority of those millions
they're
are coming
not.
from other black people?
White people.
Is that the argument you're making?
So-
Is that that the black community is getting together and putting their
Oh, that
money
it's
into
all
one
these
Who
resources
is
thing?
are
directing
basically
the
being
activism to tell people where to send their
White
money?
people are making up those activist movements. White people are making up the majority of bodies.
So
within
Patrice
those
Cullors
marches.
is white.
No, I'm not. No, I'm just saying that when you look at the BLM, all the fervor and the weight behind it, and honestly, like, this is kind of a slight at black people in a sort of way. You could read it that way, but
Yep.
that the majority of the weight that is put behind those activist movements that you see on TV is white people, white liberals, white people from the suburbs. It is not black people. Black people are the slim margin at the front of the line.
So what you're
Black
saying
people,
then is that
wait. Black people respond because, and I'm gonna fully admit this. A lot of black people in the black community only really respond to certain things. They don't, and I'm not saying everybody, and oh my gosh, this is probably gonna be clipped
be
and turn
racist.
me into a horrible person.
Yeah.
But a lot of black people in the black community only really respond when something is visually in front of them or affects them, because there are too many things that they are focused on in their own lives to really start focusing on things over.
I mean, that's true of
overwhelming.
everyone.
But
It's not a
but
black issue. But.
Yeah.
but there are certain things that I can't say every single, that a large enough number of black people all experience at the same time, that those are things that they coalesce to say, hey, this is an issue. But that does not mean that thing is funded, motivated, organized, or controlled by the black community. A lot of it is outside, because we don't, like, blacks as a whole don't really have the organization to be able to do that.
So we're back to blaming it on white people. Then.
Well, no, wait. So I
I'm
can
done.
agree.
I'm physically done.
I can
Let's-
agree.
Oh,
with
Yeah, dude.
I can
You were
agree.
like-
Stop,
V
stop,
Radio-
stop,
V-
stop,
V
stop,
Radio is so
stop,
bad faith, dude. You
stop.
are such a bad faith piece of shit.
Stop.
No,
stop.
I'm not.
physically done.
Live
No,
here, mother.
hey,
Caleb,
Scumbag,
stop.
dude. You are a
Holy
fucking
shit.
scumbag.
It's 1:30,
Why?
guys.
Yeah, let dialogue roll. Let dialogue roll.
No. I was done. But if that's what he got from what I said, I don't
He's a scumbag.
know
dude.
what else to. I
Hey,
don't know what else to say.
don't, that's
Yo,
not fair,
yo.
man. Don't say
Yeah,
that.
don't-
It is
okay,
fair.
make
He's
it.
acting like a scumbag.
It's
I'm
what.
acting like
Dude.
a scumbag. How?
Listen, he's.
You are a scumbag
Why?
because you're a piece of shit, bad
I'm a
faith
piece of
motherfucker.
shit because I'm a
Yes,
piece of shit.
you're a piece of shit.
Whoa,
bad faith
clarify
motherfucker
why, because you
that
don't
will-
have a
that will
rational
literally
reason.
bring up, like, that will
This-
literally
this
try to
is-
nitpick the entire situation into what he's trying to describe to you, and you're always going to put up the most hyperbolic, counterfactual that you can find from your
You
depth.
want
of
some
the
ranch
most-
for the
It's
word
not.
You're an
salad?
NPC,
It's not.
dude.
Like-
You're a fucking NPC.
Well, no.
Right.
Let me say it like this.
This is crazy.
You saw me. You literally just heard me try to explain why the black community really doesn't control certain things, and your best answer to that was blame white people again.
It wasn't
you're-
You
just
think that was
yeah.
you honestly
agree
think,
with
and
the
I'm not
earlier
even
thing
trying to
you
be
said,
mean.
and I'll
I'm not
give you
even trying to
credit
be
for that.
mean.
This
I
is
am.
You
so
honestly believe that was a good faith
irrelevant.
response to
I
this.
agree.
This is what this is so fucking
agree.
irrelevant. This is what I was literally trying to say
Outside.
before every fucking person interrupted me. Okay, which is that yes, Caleb, and yes, dialogue always. I could literally agree with every single fucking thing you just laid out. Okay, that it is black voices in the black community that are trying to get people to not be fucking, to be successful in our society. Okay, I can agree that 100%. I hope that's the fucking case. I fucking pray that's the case. The problem is we're not talking about that. We're talking about all this woke, horrible shit that's being popularized. I don't care if it's by black people or white people. I don't give a fuck. Whoever is popularizing it is doing the exact opposite of everything you just said, Caleb.
And,
Yeah.
well,
They're
okay,
destroying
wanna-
I
all
understand,
the
and I
goodwill.
agree with you. And
Wait,
dialogue
this
was
is
a
a genuine
genuine
question.
Stop.
I would-
This is a
Let me
genuine
Oh,
question
fucking
to say.
finish.
I
Let
would
him finish.
destroy
All the
and
goodwill.
dialogue would agree
They're
with you
destroying
that there
all.
is a negative.
Caleb, if
aspect
you don't
of
shut the
black-
fuck up and let me finish, you're getting kicked right now. Okay, this is like insane. I can't fucking. You guys have been going on. I can't get a fucking word in. Okay. The problem is, and I'm trying to fucking agree with you, I don't know why you're interrupting me, is that yes, all the shit that we're talking about with the whiteness going on right now is completely destroying all the black people in the black community that are trying to tell kids, hey, you should get a fucking education. Because now the kids can say, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm on Twitter, you know, it says you're fucking white, and this is aspects of white culture. Okay. That's the problem.
It's a big problem too. Hey, Dialogue, do you want to, I don't know that we're going to make any progress on this. So you want to, you know, go to bed, or do you want to keep fighting?
Yeah. Yeah.
How late are you allowed to fight? Because we could go for another hour, I think.
Okay, can I even make another
30
proposition?
minutes.
Can I make another proposition? If he's gonna hang longer, why don't we change the topic of conversation to something we can like somewhat
Dylan,
change
what do you
sides
want
on?
to talk about?
Yeah, fuck it, yeah.
What do I want to talk about?
Yeah.
Dylan, why are you racist?
Why am I racist? Well, ever since I met up with Azov, you know, my political beliefs have just been rapidly changing. You know, it's been developing very rapidly. Yeah. I don't know exactly what I want to talk about. I just jumped in here last second.
Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.